when you think about a huddle in football or in life, people come from all different walks of life and different beliefs. We got to get together. We got to huddle up as a country and talk about these issues so we can progress.
I've seen a lot of statements like, I've never had to experience this and I know I won't, but then he gave a statement, supporting his experiences, other experiences of Black people that he knows. Like, you don't have to go through it in order to give a, in-depth statement. Like, everybody knows what's going on.
I feel so much more encouraged by the circumstances and the situation we're in when I'm listening to the voices of other people. And it's not just Black people anymore who are, calling for change.
I felt somewhat of an NBA entertainment privilege in that I could basically hide behind my finances, my house, this gated community, and be a bit incubated from the issues that many of my brothers and sisters are dealing with. And fundamentally in my heart, I feel something wrong with that.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm your host, as always, The Pody, and it is Friday, June 5th, 2020. And I want to welcome you here today. We are in the midst of some crazy turmoil in this country right now, some of the worst riots that many of us have seen in our lifetimes, okay? And we're just at the brink of collapse in this country, and it's really a shame. This all in the wake of the George Floyd scandal. So I wanted to play you that clip to start off this show. I thought it was appropriate. Those were some prominent Black athletes and coaches in the sports world, starting off with Herm Edwards, former Jets and Chiefs head coach, former ESPN analyst, now head coach of Arizona State. You have Arike Ogunbowale. She is a Dallas Wings guard in the WNBA. You had JB Bickerstaff, the Cavs head coach, and Monty Williams, the Suns head coach, all giving their input in the wake of the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer. Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn also used his platform to speak out, telling the LA Times, quote, "I haven't done anything to make this a better place for my son. I want to do something, but to be honest with you, I don't know what that is. I don't want to be doing this again in 20 years from now, and so I'm looking for ways to sit at the table and have a conversation about this broken system." And I saw a quote from Kyle Shanahan, head coach of the 49ers, a few minutes ago, and he said the fact that there's only 4 minority or Black head coaches in the NFL and only 2 that are GMs, he's saying is there's no way that's a coincidence. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I do tend to agree. You have predominantly more Black football players, so naturally you would just think that they would almost have as many, if not more of them, in head coaching roles and in higher positions of upper management there. I know you have majority of the owners are white, so many seem to think that that plays a role, and I'm not going to disregard that or deny it or whatever. But yeah, we need to have a different approach to things. You have the Rooney Rule in place, but we need to do more, because I do truly believe you had Todd Bowles, who was the head coach of the New York Jets, which he started off all right, but then I just got sick and tired of him. And plain and simply, he didn't win, so it's nothing against him. He's a great coordinator. But yeah, he had to move on, and now he's a DC with the Bucks, and will probably go win a Super Bowl, so that's just the Jets' luck. You had Herm Edwards, who I mentioned. He was the Jets head coach as well. Awesome. I love Herm Edwards. I really do. There's Tony Dungy, who did speak out about this as well. But to not harp on that too much, I want to basically curtail this into the biggest headline and story in the sports world, and that emerged, I want to say, maybe yesterday or 2 days ago, and that was Drew Brees' comments that he made when being interviewed over video chat by Yahoo Finance. Here is just a snippet of what Drew Brees said, but basically he was talking about Colin Kaepernick when he knelt for the flag in 2016 and how he will never understand or never agree with somebody kneeling.
I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country. And is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better, and that we are all part of the solution.
Now, I'm a white man, okay? So if you want to say white privilege, whatever, that's fine. I don't believe I have white privilege, but again, I'm a white man living in a white man's world, so who am I to argue that fact, right? Or that point. So that's fine. I want to be very clear about this. I also took issue with Colin Kaepernick kneeling. I have voiced that very much so in the past. I did not truly believe that Colin Kaepernick was doing it for all of the reasons that he said. You know, he got the idea through an army vet or some military vet as a peaceful way to sort of protest the police brutality in this country, right? But the fact of the matter is, if that was supposed to be for that reason and that reason alone, then why did he blatantly wear a Fidel Castro shirt and wear pig socks to essentially make fun of police who, granted, when you're in trouble, no matter what you think of the police, when you are in trouble, who do you call? You dial 911 and you call for help, and the police show up. So you have this very again, I want to be very careful with how I state this and how I word this, because I don't want this to get misconstrued or anything like that, right? I don't know what it means to be a black man or woman or child in this country. I don't know what that hatred or what they deal with every single day of their lives, right? So I can't speak on that. Therefore, when they want to go out and protest the murder of George Floyd, that's fine. I personally don't believe that's really going to accomplish much, but people will argue with me, well, the civil rights movement, that led to protests, but I just don't see what bill or what law you're going to change to sort of fix what's going on right now. And my law school friend brought this up. So if you're not going to take my word for it, take his word for it. I'm more of a conservative. He's much more liberal. So at least we can agree on that. I don't know what more they want to come out of this or what you can possibly do legislatively to fix this. So that's one point. Now, what I do take issue with is Malcolm Jenkins, who is Drew Brees' teammate in his second stint with the New Orleans Saints. He won a Super Bowl in his second year in 2010 with the Saints. He went on social media and absolutely blasted Drew Brees, who was supposedly his friend. That's what he said. Now, if that's your friend, why would you go on social media and publicly blast him? And let's first take a listen to this clip, and then I'll dissect it a bit more.
It's unfortunate because I considered you a friend. I looked up to you. You're somebody who I had a great deal of respect for. But sometimes you should shut the up. Because while the world tells you that you're not worthy, that your life doesn't matter, the last place you want to hear from are the guys that you go to war with and that you consider to be allies and to be your friend.
So, yeah, I just want to start off by saying that it's shameful of Malcolm Jenkins to have said that and to have cursed in front of what sounded like his child in the background there. So that's really leading by example, number one, Malcolm Jenkins. And number two, to say, who has told you that your life doesn't matter? Okay, I'm sure he's not speaking of himself per se, but I truly want to know what it's like to walk in your shoes every day. I would trade my life for yours in a heartbeat. You know why? Because you grew up in Piscataway, New Jersey, where I went to college, okay? I went to college at Rutgers. That is in Piscataway, New Jersey. It's about 15 minutes away from where I live, okay? Now, I also work with a man who grew up and went to high school in Piscataway back in the 70s. Back then, it was more segregated from what he has told me, okay? But now it's more of a diverse community. When Malcolm Jenkins grew up, it's not a bad town. My friend's father, one of my closest friends who's actually been a guest on this show, his father was a police officer in Piscataway. It's not a Newark. It's not a Camden. It's not one of these violent inner cities where you grow up and there is hatred from the cops to the black people. It's nothing like that. So I'm curious to try to understand where he's coming from, because like I said, I would without a doubt trade my life for Malcolm Jenkins 100%. The man so he's from Piscataway, okay, number one. He then goes to Ohio State, okay, one of the best football programs in America, and then he goes to the New Orleans Saints, where he wins a Super Bowl in his second year. He then goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, stays there for a while, wins a Super Bowl in 2016. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so for Malcolm Jenkins to say that he's part of this collective that has been, brutalized and looked down upon from police and this and that, and from the white man, that's a joke. He has no problem lining his pockets via the white man, aka the owner of the New Orleans Saints. And I did my research here, ladies and gentlemen, just because I don't want this to look like an unfounded attack on Malcolm Jenkins. I've always had issue with him, and it could be, yes, the fact that he snubbed Rutgers and decided to go to Ohio State, but I really don't think that plays a factor, because I don't think about that too much. That's just one of those extra things that adds fuel to the fire. So his first contract, his rookie deal, was 5 years, $19 million. Okay, boom, immediately, 22-year-old kid, millionaire. Then he goes to the Eagles after that. He has two separate contracts with the Eagles. The first 3 years, $15.5 million, and the second one was a 4-year, $35 million contract, okay? He recently just signed back with the Saints on a 4-year, $32 million deal. His current contract netted him $16.25 million in guaranteed money. And guess what his base salary is for this year? Over $1 million, exactly $1.05 million. And every year throughout the contract, it gets higher and higher and higher. So his salary in 2021 jumps all the way up to $6.2 million. Then in 2022, it goes up to $7.75 million. And in 2023, a staggering $8 million. So who is Malcolm Jenkins to speak on the struggle that he's grown up with and struggled his whole life? He's a black man, sure, but he doesn't struggle. He's a millionaire. And like I said, he gets his salary from the white man. So I'm not just going to sit here and bash Malcolm Jenkins, because like I said, I've done my research, and I know what he has done for the black community. He has his own nonprofit, the Malcolm Jenkins Foundation, which is a public charity that helps to enhance the lives of young kids in underserved communities. So yes, he does a lot for the community, but he really doesn't truly know the struggle. And the fact that I'm just disappointed and mad at the fact that he would call Drew Brees out, and these other athletes, Ed Reed, I'll get to him in a second, are going to call out these your teammate who you consider your friend and your brother. If you have an issue with what he said, and this is part of the problem in America, is that when you have an issue with someone, instead of talking it out or working it out, you need to go to social media and you need to put it out there for your millions of followers. So I feel that it's fake a little bit, and I feel that it's cowardly, the fact that you couldn't pick up the phone and immediately talk to him. You have to sort of embarrass him through your social media platform, so it's totally unfounded, and I don't think that you're able to fix that relationship despite what has taken place in the coming days. Now back to, let's get to Ed Reed, who also opened his mouth and had some words for Drew Brees, who I'm disappointed with too, because one of the best, if not greatest safeties of all time, played for the New York Jets at the tail end of his career. Here's what he had to say. This shocked me.
I see Drew Brees trying to do his part in keeping black folk down. You're a straight sucker for that, Drew Brees. Drew Brees, you're a sucker. You're going to be a sucker. You understand? Punk, man.
The only punk here is you and Malcolm Jenkins, because you guys play in the NFL. Ed Reed retired. You have a platform. You know Drew Brees. You can get on the phone. You can call Drew Brees up, and you can work this out and talk to him and explain to him where you're coming from. He can explain where he's coming from. And to give a different perspective that's not just mine, I'm so glad that there were a few black sports celebrities and athletes out there that did sort of come to Drew Brees' defense, because I'm sorry, what he said, I even had friends that, again, don't believe in the same views as me that even said that they don't see anything wrong with what Drew Brees said per se, but maybe the timing of it or whatever what was bad. But the vitriol and the hate that he was getting was so devastating that I'm sure he's going to get death threats. His family's going to get death threats, and it's just totally unfounded because Drew Brees has done so much for the city of New Orleans. Look at Hurricane Katrina and all of these the charitable work he has done. He's by no means a racist or this or that, and I think we need to, as a nation, we need to obviously stop these riots because it's disgusting what I'm seeing. People trying to drive their cars down the road. People are throwing stuff at them. People are taking skateboards and bricks and throwing them through places of business, breaking into Apple stores and stealing iPhones and all sorts of other stuff. It's just terrible. If you are upset and angry over the killing of George Floyd, then protest, even though I don't feel that that's going to do too much. But there's no need to run around and break stuff and light fires and destroy police cars and all that other stuff that we're seeing in the news. Okay? And to one other point I want to mention, I have used the words all lives matter, and I was told that I can't use that word. That dubs me a racist, apparently. And I had arguments with my friends because I don't understand what I'm supposed to say at this point. So for the time being, thankfully, I'm not a huge celebrity with a huge following. But if I would have said nothing and call me complicit in whatever and tell me that I'm cowardly. That's fine. But I'd rather say nothing than say the wrong thing and be hated even more, such as what Drew Brees did, even though I did not disagree with it, and that's fine. And here's my perspective, right? If you want to kneel in the upcoming season, now that this has happened, I'm sure more players are going to be likely to kneel, right? That's fine. That is their right. In this country, you have a lot of freedoms, and that is one of them. I don't have to agree with it, but guess what? At the end of the day, that's totally fine, and we could still be friends. Me and my friends, per se, we argue politics all the time, and we say some sort of hurtful and demeaning things to each other, but at the end of the day, it's not going to, it's not going to get in the way or come in the way of our friendship, and that's the most important thing. So for Malcolm Jenkins to put his friendship and his brotherhood ahead, to put his beliefs ahead of that brotherhood and that friendship with Drew Brees, it's kind of sad and disappointing, and I think that's what a lot of people are doing. So for right now, I'm just going to play a couple clips, one from Charles Barkley sort of siding with Drew Brees, not siding with him, but basically talking about how he sort of understands where Drew Brees is coming from, and he believes that the hatred towards him was just totally unfair and unjust. So here is that. I'll play that clip first.
Drew Brees was wrong in his initial statement, but the level of vitriol, anger, and things like that, I thought was overkill. Drew Brees, whatever he said, I thought he talked about, hey, the flag means different things to different people. But I thought the way he was portrayed on television and radio today was not fair at all. Drew Brees has done some amazing things in New Orleans and his life. I'm not even talking about football. He made a mistake in a statement. But this level of we've got to kill everybody who says something we don't agree with, I'm never going to go with the mob. I want to make it clear. I did not like what he said right away. But the vitriol and animosity and hatred he just got for the last 24 hours, I thought it was overkill. That's just my personal opinion.
The key there that Charles Barkley mentions is to not go with the mob. Don't go with the flow. The flow, the easy thing to do in this country right now is to hate the police and to hate the president and to call them a bunch of racist, white, privileged individuals and et cetera, et cetera. The easy thing to do is to go out and riot and to join the numbers and to light fires, and because you're not gonna get caught and you got this pent up anger. And I'm seeing not just black people, people. I'm seeing a lot of white people, causing mayhem and destruction in these cities. And what good is that going to cause? You're only destroying your own backyard, which is foolish and stupid. Okay, so be the person that's going to make the change. Go out there. If you see somebody doing something they should not be doing, stop them. Tell them, think about what you're doing. You're only destroying your own neighborhood here. You're not going to elicit any change. So be the person that's going, wake up one day or tomorrow or today and just think about that. Try to be a little bit better each and every day, because that's what we need. We don't need hatred. We don't need violence, that's for sure, because you can't fight violence with violence. There was an individual by the name of George Floyd who was murdered by a police officer for over 8.5 minutes. Don't then go out and cause violence and chaos and destruction. There was a 77-year-old retired police captain, an African-American man, a black man, who was helping his friend, who owns a pawn shop. He went there to safeguard the place, and somebody live streamed his murder on the internet. It is things like this that you won't necessarily see in the news. The murder while these riots are going on. You had one man that was murdered by a Minneapolis police officer. But then, because of all these riots, you have others dying, being shot with rubber bullets. Just, it's not helping. And I don't want to digress or really, banter on too much about this, because it's really starting to not be about sports anymore. But seriously, the hatred and condemn, of Drew Brees, like it's sad, and it's. I personally, I was not brought up that way, and if I have an issue with what somebody says, then I was taught to work it out. So if, one of my friends says something that I don't agree with, I'll tell him, hey man, listen, like, I think that was wrong. You shouldn't have said that. And we could hash things out and we could come to an understanding, and maybe I see something from his side, or he sees something from my side. And like Charles said, the flag means different things to different people. So if people want to kneel for the flag, I don't have to agree with it, just like they don't have to agree with what Drew Brees said. Now, here's what Shaquille O'Neal had to say.
I know Drew Brees. He's not a racist. He said what he said. The timing was terrible. He made a mistake. But I was on the call today when he apologized to his friends. And my good friend, who's from my hometown, Newark, New Jersey, Malcolm Jenkins, was the first one that said, brother, I accept your apology. So, Drew Brees does a lot in the city of New Orleans. Look, he made a mistake. The timing was bad. And again, a lot of time when, we make our points, we need to focus on making our points to where it cannot be interrupted. See, if you allow other people to throw interruptions in your point, then they could, cause drama in the point that you're trying to make.
Now, to his point on this apology that Drew Brees issued, he did. There was a conference call. I don't have that audio. It was with his teammates and such. I'm glad to hear that Malcolm Jenkins accepted the apology. I do want to play one that Drew Brees put on his Instagram, though. It was about 50 seconds of him speaking on, and issuing an apology, which personally, I really don't think he needed to issue an apology. That was his belief. I don't think he said anything wrong. Malcolm Jenkins initially, I think in his statement, or somebody said it, that he's talking about him, and it's not about Drew Brees. It's not about you. It's not about your grandfathers, because he talked about when he thinks of the flag, he thinks of his grandfathers fighting in World War II. But he also mentioned the civil rights movement, and nobody wants to talk about that. So anyway, here was Drew Brees' apology.
I know there's not much that I can say that would make things any better right now, but I just want you to see in my eyes how sorry I am for the comments that I made yesterday. I know that it hurt many people, especially friends, teammates, former teammates, loved ones, people that I care and respect deeply. That was never my intention. I wish I would have laid out what was on my heart in regards to the George Floyd murder, Ahmaud Arbery, the years and years of social injustice, police brutality, and the need for so much reform and change in regards to legislation and so many other things to bring equality to our black communities. I am sorry, and I will do better, and I will be part of the solution. and I am your ally.
Okay, so there you have that. Now, initially, Michael Thomas, his teammate, wide receiver for the Saints, didn't really appreciate his comments, but he has since come forth, and I thought he issued a really genuine statement on Twitter, and I really liked what he had to say, so I'm going to share that. He said, and I quote, "One of my brothers made a public statement yesterday that I disagreed with. He apologized, and I accept it because that's what we are taught to do as Christians." Now back to the movement. And that is so well said by Michael Thomas, because that is what we have to realize and what we have to get back to in this world that we live in today. If somebody does something that is wrong or that you don't agree with, you can't condemn them. You can't throw them under the bus and just throw them aside and never speak to them again. No. You have to talk to them. You have to work things out. You have to accept their apologies when given, and you have to be able to work together. These two are not going anywhere. They're teammates. They're going to go to war with each other, when the season starts back up again. And so they have to be, it's a brotherhood. And so if you can't forgive and forget, then you really can't move past this. So I'm thankful and glad that they're able to hopefully move past this a little bit. And I'm glad that as well that Charles and Shaq made those statements that they did. And I'm also very happy to hear Malcolm Jenkins accepted an apology, although I still am not a fan of his, and I don't think I ever will be. But that's great and all. That's well. He doesn't care he doesn't know who I am, so he's never going to hear this, and that's fine. But again, what happened with Drew Brees, the hate that he got, and the people calling him out and calling him a racist. It's very important to know Shaquille O'Neal said he is not a racist. So if Shaq says it, then there you have it. And the charitable work he's done in the New Orleans era, enough said, people. Let's just move on. So I've seen celebrities mention things left and right over this George Floyd stuff, and I've seen different sides of this all being condemned and all being thrown shade on the internet. Number one, Ellen DeGeneres. She posted and used the words people of color and got absolutely lambasted on the internet, which I was shocked because my friends have been using that word. And I'm like, well, why can't she use those words, people of color? Then I saw when people were using All Lives Matter, namely the announcer for the Sacramento Kings, who got fired basically over a response to DeMarcus Cousins saying All Lives Matter. I was totally flabbergasted because I had used those words, and I later realized apparently I'm not allowed to say that. Then you have Hugh Jackman, Wolverine. He posted a picture of, I guess, a white cop and a protester hugging, and then he got hatred for that. So what it all comes down to at the end of the day, this Black Lives Matter movement, I don't want to tick anybody off here, but they will not be satisfied unless you put the words Black Lives Matter into a sentence. So if you, God forbid, you say all lives matter, which truthfully, that is my belief, unless you are a convicted rapist or murderer or a felon of some sort, then your life really doesn't matter at that point. If you're on like death row or something, right? You're a serial killer. But I truly believe that each and every life is valued and does matter. I grew up in one of the most diverse high schools and towns probably in America. Okay, I went to high school and went to middle school with people of all different creeds, races, ethnicities, backgrounds, colors, anything you name it. Black, Hispanic, Indian, Asian, everybody. I've went to school with them all, okay? So therefore, I guess maybe I'm more exposed to the diversity in this country than some maybe in the deep South, okay? So might be a little bit different, but we all just need to take a step back. I know we're angry over the events that have unfolded in this country, but we can't fight violence with violence, all right? So hopefully we can move past this eventually and we can get back to civilized America, because this is, after all, the greatest country of all. So just remember that. Okay, now let's move this thing along. We got to talk some baseball, all right? And it's not looking pretty. Each day that goes by, I'm starting to wonder if we're even going to have a season at this point. Okay, the players countered the league with a 114-game schedule, which would end the season on October 31st. Okay, they would have deferred salaries in the event of a canceled postseason. There was the option for players to opt out of the season due to coronavirus concerns. But that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
There's a number of owners right now who really don't want to play baseball in 2020. And if those owners look at this proposal coming back from the MLBPA and say, this is so radical, this is so off, we cannot possibly go forward, and suddenly start getting other owners who may have been more in the middle on their side, that is when things turn really catastrophic for the prospect of a 2020 season.
The MLB then came back and started considering this last-ditch effort, discussing a plan that would include a 50-game season beginning in July, where members of the Players Association will earn their full prorated salaries. Then I heard yesterday there's a new report that it might be a 48-game schedule. So what's this all about?
When MLB is pushing like that, and your only option seemingly against this is litigation, do the players then want to have put themselves in the position where they're the ones who are making this into a legal issue and fighting back and causing the season not to be had? As one owner said earlier today, we're going to have baseball this year. That confidence, if it's coming from owners, is a good sign for the 2020 baseball season.
So 50 games to me feels like we would be cheated out of a baseball season, because if you think about it, what would a 50-game season look like? Well, the reigning World Series champs, don't ask them, because after 50 games last season, they were 9 games back of first place in the NL East, okay, and had the 4th worst record in Major League Baseball. They, of course, went on to finish the final 112 games with a 74-38 record, which was tied for the best in baseball. So, we're at the point now where this is crunch time. The NBA has started to announce a comeback date. The NHL playoffs are going to start soon. MLS is going to start back up. And you have MLB and the players, and they can't come to terms on anything. So, yeah, it's rough, and it doesn't look good. The MLB rejected the 114-game schedule with no additional salary cuts. They told the union they don't plan on making a counter-proposal. The Players Union made it clear they are not taking a pay cut and resoundingly rejected the league's plan to restart the season. The league drastically, like I said, they want this 50 or 48-game reduced schedule in order for owners to be able to pay players on a per-game basis.
The NBA now has a return-to-play plan, and baseball's entire advantage in this whole thing, which was coming back before any other sport could, has been completely frittered away. That is Major League Baseball completely ceding its territory to a sport that believes so much in its product and so little in Major League Baseball's that it is considering moving its season entirely to go over what baseball had with those summer months.
It's shocking, and he's right. Baseball had a grand opportunity as the national pastime in America. We all know that the viewership and the numbers are dipping and waning, and it's more of a older person's type sport. Nobody wants to sit there or go to a game and sit for 4 hours and watch baseball. They think it's boring, right? But they had a primo opportunity to restart the season before any of the major sports and get that viewership and get those numbers back up and get people to buy back into the great sport of baseball. Okay, now earlier this week was the 10-year anniversary of one of, if not for situations, the situation that they were in, this could be the worst call by an umpire in Major League Baseball history. We take you back 10 years ago.
Armando Galarraga is 1 out away from perfection.
17,000 to its feet.
The guy we've been waiting for all night.
Ground ball, right side. Cabrera will cut it off. Galarraga covers. He's out. No, he's safe. He is safe.
Why is he safe? Jim Joyce, no!
What a travesty. What an absolute travesty for Armando Galarraga.
I missed it. This is a history call, and I kicked the shit out of it. And there's nobody that feels worse than I do.
All eyes were on Jim Joyce the next day when the teams took the field. Joyce walked out in tears. And despite how bad the call was and what it meant to his career, it was Galarraga that came out to greet Joyce that day for the lineup cards. A truly beautiful sports moment.
Yeah, if that was me, I'm never speaking to Jim Joyce again. That is a career-making call that imagine having a perfect game and you clearly have the out at first by more than a step, and he blows the call. I mean, even if he wasn't paying attention and the guy was safe and it was a bang-bang call, this, of course, before instant replay, you call the guy out. It's a routine ground ball to first base or wherever it was, and Galarraga covering. You make the out call. Nobody's going to argue it. But the fact that he had such a brain fart and he calls him safe, just one of those things that you'll never forget. And for the most part, most of us, believe that Galarraga, he had a perfect game. It's it's obvious. It's not going to be in the record books, but it unofficially is there because he pitched one hell of a game and he deserved that. So just a terribly tragic moment and it's something that it's going to define Jim Joyce's career as an umpire, and that's just that. All right, so moving on, let's talk NASCAR. They continue to pump out all these races. You have the Supermarket Heroes 500 from Bristol Motor Speedway. Let's take it. Let's start off at with 12 laps to go. Denny Hamlin gets bumped by Joey Logano, and he would spin out, ending his day. With 3 laps to go, Chase Elliott, who had one hell of a week last week, he gets a little too close to the corner and he wrecks into Logano. Okay, so Logano causing a couple of people to crash here, and then in the end, Brad Keselowski takes the lead, and he would win his second of the season.
I'm watching Chase and Joey. I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. It was just such a turn of events. It felt like I was sitting in Vegas and playing poker, and I got all the turns, what they call it, the river and all that. All the turns went my way, and went from having a bad hand to having a full house real quick.
Yeah, if that's not the truth, man. You're losing, couple guys wreck, and you just soar right into first place and get the win. So a special moment there for him. All right, the UFC is set to restart. We're supposed to have UFC 250 tomorrow night. Should be important. But this is marred by a back and forth between Dana White and John Bones Jones, and it's ugly. So John Jones tweeted on Sunday he is relinquishing his light heavyweight belt, and he's going to take some time away from the sport. This comes after a heated week of negotiations between him and Dana White.
Being the greatest of all time doesn't mean you get $30 million. Being able to sell. John Jones has done a lot of things to himself. He's saying, in one of his tweets, he was saying that I tarnished you? You've done a very good job of tarnishing you. I'm always looking at what John Jones could have been. He could have been the LeBron of the sport. He could have been literally that big. The stuff that he's been through to show up and basically demand $15 million or $20 million or $30 million. It's crazy.
Jones did respond to that, saying, telling Dana White to release him from his contract. Now, speaking to what Dana White was saying about, I did this to you. No, you did this to yourself. That would be the legal troubles that John Jones has been in, the cocaine abuse, the just all the different legal issues that he's had. And I don't want to speak too ill of him because he is boys with Robert Frank 615. They have hung out in person. So, and hey, he's a cool dude, but yeah, he has been in some legal troubles. So that's what Dana White is talking about. So he is a little flabbergasted that he is demanding all this money for his next fight. So yeah, not looking good. Hopefully they could come to terms because John Jones still is probably the best ever to do it. His brothers play in the NFL. Is just a athletic beast of a family. Okay, let's talk about the NBA because a lot has happened in this past week. All right. Let's start off with the 22-team tournament style season. It is now going to happen officially. The owners were pushing for all 30 teams. I'm sure a bunch of teams at the bottom wanted that to make that happen, but it wasn't realistic because of the small capacity, the bubble or so that they're going to be playing in Orlando, the centralized area. It's not safe enough to have that many people. Either way, the owners were on board with whatever the league deemed fit or wanted to do. A final decision was made yesterday by Adam Silver and the Board of Governors. So here is Brian Windhorst with more.
Adam Silver has made it a top priority. His number one priority is making his owners happy, which in large part means making money. His number two priority is to make the players feel like they have an ownership as much as they can. And I don't think we should take for granted that there's going to be a labor peace in the NBA as we get through this. But the fact that they are going to move forward this week and potentially announce this is an indication all of Adam Silver's hard work is going to lead to something meaningful here.
Okay, the Board of Governors voted yesterday 29-1 in favor of the 22-team format. The Blazers were the only team that voted against this. Now, there were some other teams that were leaning that way as well, but ultimately it was just the Blazers that voted against it just because of the certain format that they didn't like, or the fact that no matter what happens in these final 8 games, their draft spot or lottery pick doesn't change due to that. Okay, NBA draft and free agency will occur in October. I'll get to more on that later.
Financially and competitively, allowing other teams in, and how far do you go? 20, 22. Now you've got regular season games. You've got play-in games. And the revenue, I'm told, from having just the 16 and going to the playoffs versus 22 and having the play-in regular season games, several $100 million more to teams, and that is absolutely a factor in this.
So they keep saying 22 teams. So how will this look? There will be 13 teams from the Western Conference, 9 Eastern Conference teams. We will see 8 regular season games. The top 16 teams in both conferences will be joined by clubs currently within 6 games of 8th place. So those teams are the Pelicans, okay, the Trailblazers, the Spurs, the Kings, the Suns, and the Wizards. There is a potential play-in tournament if the 9th seed is within 4 games of the 8th seed at the end of the regular season. Now, many believe that the NBA dropped the ball. We could have had a much cleaner, a much cooler play-in style, type tournament style of play here, but this is what they've decided to go with. It's not too sexy, but hey, at least we get to see some teams given an opportunity to make the so-called playoffs. And what happens to those teams that are now left out?
They're already pushing the NBA for, summer leagues and off-season training, and they've got to work that out with the Players Association. There were teams who wanted to return. There were a significant amount of regular season games left, and they turned those teams back.
So we're talking teams like the Atlanta Hawks, the Chicago Bulls, the Charlotte Hornets, the New York Knicks, teams like that will be sitting at home now and are wondering, when can they get back to basketball or back to work, okay? Because they are left out. So here are some of the key dates in restarting the season. July 9th through the 11th will be training camp. From July 31st to October 12th, the season will take place. October 12th is if it were to go to a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. August 25th, you have the draft lottery. October 15th will be the NBA draft, so possibly just 3 days after the season is over. November 10th, you then have training camp starting for the 2020-2021 season beginning. And let's talk testing real quick, which should be interesting, right? You want to know about how they're going to keep those safeguards in place and the health and safety of players and coaches and staff. The NBA is planning to have daily testing in Orlando. If a player tests positive for the virus, they will be removed from the team to quarantine and be treated individually. Same goes for team employees. Now, I think I saw somewhere that they're possibly considering if you have an older staff member, a coach, they might not be permitted on the sidelines with the team. So that's something that we'll have to just wait and see how that's going to be. And speaking of daily testing, the Alabama Crimson Tide football team was allowed to come back to campus this past week. And 5 players returned, were tested for coronavirus, and unfortunately tested positive for the virus. So they brought it onto the campus with them. Hopefully they've now been isolated, quarantined, and it hasn't really spread. But, these are the dangers with returning to sports and bringing players from all different areas of the country back into one place. You don't know what they're going to get or what they're carrying with them, because a lot of these players are asymptomatic. So there's that. Okay, now let's talk about the MLS, because I did bring that up before. The league and the players union near a CBA deal to avoid a lockout. A formal deal was expected to be ratified sometime on Wednesday. Teams are scheduled to head to Central Florida on or around June 24th and be the first league to return to action. So this is a great opportunity for the MLS, who really, of any major sport, is as low on the totem pole as it gets.
If your plan is to do a tournament to kick off the attention and to bring attention, where you're going to be the only league in the United States that is currently playing with the NHL, NBA, and Major League Baseball looking to follow you, there is an opportunity for the sport and the league to really get some eyeballs that would have never had those eyeballs on them.
So there you have that. And it's very smart and I guess it's working, because Kevin Durant, who it is still up in the air as to whether or not he is going to return to the NBA this season and play for his new team, the Brooklyn Nets, but he did actually, spark news headlines today yesterday when it was leaked that Kevin Durant has bought in to a 5% minority stake in the MLS's Philadelphia Union, a 5% stake worth approximately $240 million. So very interesting and intriguing there. So, hey, I'm actually just looking forward to sports in general. I don't really watch the MLS, but if it's sports and it's on television, I'll turn it on and I'll watch. So this is a great example. MLS could do what the MLB should have been able to do. So, yeah. And then last but not least, guys, real quick, the NHL playoffs, they should be getting underway next month. The league and the Players Association reached an agreement finally on a playoff format. They will have a play-in round, which will be a best-of-5. Then the 4 playoff rounds after that will be best-of-7 series, and teams would be reseeded after each round. So that's interesting enough, and can't wait for that. Okay, we're at the end of the show. We always finish off on this date in sports. We'll take it all the way back to June 5th, 2001, when Barry Bonds homered for the 30th time in the team's 57th game of the season, becoming the fastest player in Major League history to reach 30 home runs in a season. Obviously, it was steroid-induced a little bit, so there's that. But yeah, wow, seems like a really long time ago. Okay, speaking of steroids and performance-enhancing drugs, today I just finally finished part 2 of the Lance Armstrong documentary. If you have not seen it, please, I highly encourage it. It was a great watch and very interesting to learn all this fascinating stuff about Lance Armstrong and his life and all that good stuff, and just amazing. Okay, a little bit of what's on TV this weekend and moving forward. You have UFC 250. You have, I mentioned that earlier, this is the big one. The main event is the women's featherweight title. Okay, this will take place tomorrow night. You have Amanda Nunes from Brazil facing off against Canadian Felicia Spencer. Then on Sunday, ESPN is airing another new 30 for 30, this one called Be Water. It is going to focus on the life of Bruce Lee, which I am really intrigued by. And then Wednesday is my dad's birthday, so I will give him a happy birthday shout out. Happy birthday, Dad. I'm not going to embarrass you or anything like that by revealing your age, so you are welcome. Consider that an early birthday present. Okay, last but not least, there's been a lot going on in the world, and I just want to say I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it takes you away from all the hate and negativity for just a few minutes or just about an hour. Feel free to subscribe to the show. It is also now available on YouTube. If you would like to head there and listen to the show on YouTube, you could subscribe there as well. Okay, and to steal, I just want to end this by saying this. I'm going to steal a quote from Ellen DeGeneres. Let's all just be a little kinder to each other, please. We could surely use the kindness in this world right now. So please, try to be a little nicer to your if you go to the store to pick up groceries, be a little bit nicer to the cashier. Be a little bit nicer. If somebody can't reach something at the top of the shelf, offer to help them. Offer to help somebody to bring their groceries to the car. You name it. Just be a little kinder to each other. And finally, hang in there a little longer because the NBA is headed to the most magical place on earth. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.